to read chapter 5 of the record of the orally transmitted teachings, the parable of the medicinal herbs. There are only 5 important points, but it discusses different aspects of Buddhism. I'm going to go to the dictionary and go to, okay? So this is for you too, all right? This is what we call the Gosho, all right? These are the writings of Nichiren, not the writings of Nichiren, the writings of Nichiren Daishonin, but these are all letters and treatises, okay? So if there was ever a question of like, well, how does this compare to the Flower Garland Sutra? How would you debate the flower? Nichiren has already done all those debates, okay? So we don't really, we don't pay that much attention to them because we're already clear on what the correct teaching is. Well, for somebody that would be looking at Buddhism broadly, this would seem almost like, is this really Buddhism? Because it's based on something that I'm not really familiar with, which is the teachings of Nichiren, okay? And that's what, there's only, we've read like 300 of these letters, okay? We've read everything in this pile, okay? This was just all preparatory for where we are now, okay? This is not only the Goshos themselves that I would read in full, but then these are individual lectures on all those Goshos. So the whole point that I'm trying to make is that all of this really is for the sake of getting back to this, okay? Because we have different ages as it relates to this teaching, okay? And Shakyamuni Buddha obviously is the Buddha, the guy that started this whole process of this kind of meditative thinking and a deeper level of understanding of life and its components. As time went on, though, mankind progressed, okay? So he had already broken it into periods of time as to when the teachings that he taught would be germane and applicable, and when at a point in time we would reach this time called the latter age, whereas by it's revealed in the Lotus Sutra, but then again, when we say revealed in the Lotus Sutra, you've got translations of the Lotus Sutra, okay, which again are not verifiable because this was all spoken prior to recorded, written history. So, pardon me. The issue with this then is the fact that in the latter day of the law, the Lotus Sutra, okay, according to Shakyamuni's teachings from the Great Collection of Sutras, I mentioned to you, this has already gone into this is a different age for a different people, because the people are born into the karmic reality that exists from their own causes, right? So we have a series of books by Daisaku Ikeda that are an explanation of the Lotus Sutra, okay? But actually, this isn't an explanation of the Lotus Sutra. This is an explanation of Nichiren's enlightenment and is intended for his disciples in the latter age, okay? So we can read this kind of academically, but in the absence of faith, it's not going to have the power and the impact that it would if you were pursuing it from the standpoint of someone that practiced and had utilized all this preparatory stuff to know how in the hell we get to this point now, okay? So, again, there's a famous lecture on this. I was talking to a friend and he said, the chapter 2 expedient means was kind of dense. I think you could have really helped yourself by going over this and going over this. This is really the heart of the Lotus Sutra. This is basically a translation of Gongyo you just heard us doing, okay? So, but this is again still focused on the Lotus Sutra, okay, and Shakyamuni, whereas this is Nichiren speaking. Okay, and sometimes, and most of the references aren't necessarily from Shakyamuni. They're from Shakyamuni's teaching, but actually there have been other great Buddhas that have been born since Shakyamuni's time, okay, who have all made clarifications and clarifications and clarifications, okay? So this whole thing in terms of what it's really saying for the current time has always been progressively growing, okay, in accord with the capacity of the people. All right? So, what this actually does then is it takes from the 28 chapters of the Lotus Sutra, and if you wanted to, you said you wanted to read chapter 5. You can read chapter 5. It's probably not that long relative to even this thing. So you could do it in in less than an hour. Okay? So this is 28 chapters long, and what we have now here is a 28 chapter rendition from Nichiren of what he thinks are the important elements of this work as it relates to the latter age, not the former and the middle day, which is what this was written for. Is that clear at all? Did you follow that at all? Did anybody follow that? I'm sure, okay. Yeah. So I wasn't screwing up as anything. So you okay. So we're here to learn about Nichiren's interpretation of the Buddhism of sowing, which is a Buddhism that he has created that has never existed before. Yeah. And he says, hey, this has never existed before because Nam-myoho Renge-kyo had never been revealed, hidden in the depths of the 16th chapter, the lifespan chapter. Okay, that's where he got it. So this is something that he divined. Once he divined that understanding that not only is he a Buddha, just like Shakyamuni, but everybody else is too, just like Shakyamuni. Shakyamuni's no greater than anybody else. He's just a human being that was able to gain the clarity that we call Buddha wisdom. That's called enlightenment. We refer to that as enlightenment. That's awakening, right? The awakening is nothing more, ultimately, than finally being able to genuinely understand and fundamentally utilize the reality that you are a Buddha in your present form, no matter what your deficiencies may be. That deficiencies are window treatment. They are not the pane of glass, okay? They're temporary, and they're always expressing something that if you utilize them correctly, deficiencies can carry you forward, okay? Because it becomes a motivation for you to try to improve beyond those deficiencies, right? So this is Chapter 5, the parable of the medicinal herbs, 5 important points. I think I've gone over everything I got to go over as a preamble, other than to discuss the things in the dictionary. And the reason that we go to the dictionary, rather than me just ripping off a few sentences off the top of my head, is we like to try and focus on what's really the correct understanding, okay? Now, you'll notice that this is like was published by the Soka Gakkai, but who translated this work? What's that guy's name say?
Burton
Watson, one of the most famous translators of Asian, like the everything Buddhism. I mean, anything, everything. So anything that was in Mandarin or Chinese, he's died now since we've known that, but at any rate, the Soka Gakkai got the best guy in the world to do the translation, so there couldn't be any bullshit about whether or not it was translated correctly, because everything other than this has been translated by priests of the schools for which that publication has been made. Okay, so we like to think that this is more accurate in its neutral perspective, because this isn't, again, Burton Watson isn't a member of the Soka Gakkai either. Okay, so we're not interested in things that are that just play into what we're saying. We want to know what the truth is, and then we want to be able to understand that truth in a way that makes sense for us and that empowers our lives. Okay, so that's the whole deal. All right, in this 5th chapter, we're going to read a couple of things. So first of all, let me read the, and I have a very unique way of keeping track of everything here. It's called bits and pieces. I call it bits and pieces. What we do too is, since this is a whole chapter of the Lotus Sutra, and then this is a synopsis of the important issues, and we're not reading the Lotus Sutra, for those that haven't read the Lotus Sutra and have an idea of the context, what we do is every time we go into a new chapter, we go to the dictionary, The dictionary is, again, was done by the Gosho Translation Committee. It's like this is all brainiac people that have legitimate credential that have created these definitions. And these definitions are reflective and respectful of Buddhism of all schools. Okay, so they'll always give the historical correct perception, and then if there's something that Nichiren said that qualified that a little further as it relates to his teaching, then they'll add it. Okay, so we're going to start out with a sort of a synopsis of this chapter as though we had read it from the Lotus Sutra. Okay, it says the parable of the medicinal herbs chapter. The 5th chapter of the Lotus Sutra. In this chapter, Shakyamuni Buddha relates the parable of the 3 kinds of medicinal herbs and 2 kinds of trees to illustrate that although the Buddha's teaching is the same, people who encounter it understand it differently and develop in different ways. The parable is about the rain comes down. It's the same rain for everything, but everything lives and utilizes the rain differently in order to sustain and maintain life. Okay? So that's like the law and the incarnate state. According to the parable, rain falls equally upon all kinds of plants and trees, but they absorb the moisture differently and grow to varying heights according to their individual natures. It's their karma, actually. In the same way, the Buddha impartially expounds only the one Buddha vehicle for all people, but their understanding and benefits differ according to their respective capacities. And when he says the one Buddha vehicle, the Lotus Sutra, in the Lotus Sutra, up until the Lotus Sutra, there had been his closest disciples were called, the group that followed him around everywhere. They were made up of voice hearers, okay, which were people that were gaining wisdom from listening to others that had wisdom. They had Pratyeka Buddhas or cause awakened ones. These are people that have been able to, just by viewing things, discern a truth that they were able to internalize. Okay, and then you have bodhisattvas. Bodhisattvas are actually Buddhas that come to help propagate the correct teaching that allows everybody to be just like them, Buddhas. But you don't start out as a Buddha. Even though you have the Buddha nature, it's dormant until you activate it.
Yes.
Okay, and the only way that it can truly be activated in the latter day of the law, because since it's the latter day, is to call it out by its true identity, which is Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. The essence of your life, according to our teaching, is Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. What is Nam Myoho Renge Kyo? It's the original state of existence. It's the original state. Okay? It's not a person or a place or a thing. It's a law. Okay? It's the law of the simultaneity of cause and effect. In other words, it's not cause and then effect later. Simultaneously, in the moment of any cause or any effect, also lies the effect and the cause that correspond to that. So that's why you can change from chanting anything. That's where the benefit comes from. The benefit comes from your ability as a Buddha, because that's what you are as a living being. And by the way, when we talk about living beings, again, we're not hung up on people. Living beings are every kind of person, every kind of people, good, bad, ugly, whatever color they are, wherever they're from, whatever their foibles, they're all living beings, all right? They're all equal under in the vision of the Lotus Sutra. At the same time, living beings include all living things. All living things are living beings, okay? So we don't believe that, there's no cause in killing a chicken, even if you eat the chicken and that's what you're going to do again tomorrow. There's always a causality in what you do and how you express yourself and your behavior. So let me get to the dictionary then here. Okay, so that's the whole thing, is that the bottom line is we're all different, but we all progress at different rates based on how much we put into it. It's as easy as that. It's really just cause and effect. Okay, so I'm going to just try to remember all the things that I was going to pull out of here. I have markers for most of them. I just got one. Okay, here's 9 consciousnesses. He's going to get into the 9th consciousness. And in Buddhism, generally, other schools have only 8 consciousnesses, whatever. I'm going to give you the dictionary definition defining all that. So the 9 kinds of discernment, okay, because what is consciousness?
A perception.
It's a perception, okay? 9 kinds of discernment. Consciousness is the translation of the Sanskrit vijnana, which means discernment. The 9 consciousnesses are 1, sight conscious, 2, hearing conscious. I'm not going to try and give you the Indian. It's there. I don't do well pronouncing it. The smell consciousness is 3. The taste consciousness is number 4. The touch consciousness is number 5. The mind consciousness is number 6. Okay, so these are our 5 senses, okay, and our mind, all right, which allows us to perceive those 5 senses and what it's communicating to us. So those are the first 6 consciousnesses. They're pretty easy to figure out what they could be. The mind consciousness is number 6. The mano consciousness is number 7. The alaya consciousness is number 8. And the amala consciousness is number 9. The Sanskrit is the same for both the 6th and 7th consciousnesses. If I would have been doing this in Sanskrit or in, you'd have heard me say the same thing. The first 5 consciousnesses correspond to the 5 senses of sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. The 6th consciousness integrates the perceptions of the 5 senses into coherent images and makes judgments about the external world. In contrast with the first 6 consciousnesses, which deal with the external world, the 7th, or mano consciousness, corresponds to the inner spiritual world. Okay? So this is now of your own creation, everything that's going on at that point in time. Okay? It's your mind telling you that interpretation. Awareness and attachment to the self are said to originate from mano consciousness, as does the ability to distinguish between good and evil. The 8th, or alaya consciousness, exists in what modern psychology calls the unconscious, and consciousness exists in Consciousness exists in what modern psychology calls unconsciousness. All experiences of present and past lifetimes, collectively called karma, are stored there. Okay? So collectively called karma are stored there. The alaya consciousness receives the results of one's good and evil deeds and stores them as karmic potentials or seeds, which then produce the rewards of either happiness or suffering accordingly. Hence, it was rendered as storehouse consciousness. In Chinese, the alaya consciousness thus forms the framework of individual existence. The Dharma characteristics school regards the 8th consciousness as the source of all spiritual and physical phenomena. Okay, this is where we now then differ, but we share with some other schools this understanding of a 9th consciousness. The summary of the Mahayana, the Tiantai school, which is where this all starts from, the Flower Garland Sutra, which is the very first sutra that was spoken after he came out of his samadhi and under the Bodhi tree, but that is Mahayana, not Hinayana. These 3 schools, the Tiantai school and the Flower Garland school, these 2 schools, postulate a 9th consciousness called the Amala consciousness, which lies below the alaya consciousness and remains free from all karmic impurity. This 9th consciousness is defined as the basis of all life's functions. Hence, it was rendered as fundamental pure consciousness in Chinese. And Nichiren defines it as Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, the 9th consciousness, okay? And then I can go to the next one, which is the 3 bodies, okay? So one of the things that we always talk about is coming to the realization that we are thus come ones of original enlightenment, eternally endowed with the 3 bodies, okay? that realization, more than just knowing how to say it and understanding it theoretically, is the actualization of the Buddha nature, okay? Becoming manifest. It's active, it's alive. You can be a Buddha in your present form now. It was always there until you activated it. Once you activate it, it can grow, okay? So the three bodies you already possess, but you don't understand that you do. And the reason they're important is because in terms of Buddhism, in order to be a Buddha, you had to have these three bodies. Okay, so what Nichiren qualifies is that by chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo in the latter day of the law and supporting and teaching others about the teaching of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, we acquire, which is really, we've made the cause now to reveal. Okay, so I'm going to go into the three bodies because he's going to mention it and you're going to say, what the hell is he talking about? Three kinds of body, three bodies, three kinds of body a Buddha may possess. Three kinds of body a Buddha may possess. A concept set forth in Mahayana Buddhism to recognize different views of the Buddha appearing in the sutras. So this was really to qualify all the sutras saying all this strange stuff that was almost not possible in the real world, right? He says, the three bodies are as follows. The Dharma body, or the body of the law. Okay, this is the fundamental law or truth or law to which a Buddha is enlightened. Like for us, it's Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. We don't see any separation between the law of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and all phenomena, including our own lives, right? Okay, the reward body obtained as the reward of completing bodhisattva practices and acquiring the Buddha wisdom. Okay, so how do you do that? You go through this process of, like I just said, you really have already made the causes karmically to be the Buddha, but you haven't revealed that. That process of practice is called the expression of being a bodhisattva, right? All right, so he's saying that the reward body is obtained from completing bodhisattva practices and acquiring Buddha wisdom. That means you attain the realization that you are the Buddha, and you've always been the Buddha. And the misunderstanding or lack of perception that you are the Buddha has been delusion. Okay, not enlightenment. Enlightenment is to see everything connected with the original state. And the original state is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. It's the building block of everything. You can break anything and everything down to its most finite thing, and it's the law of the simultaneity of cause and effect. That's what motivates generational change, orbital change. It's completely universally applicable to all modern science, this concept.
Yes.
Okay? So it says so when you have the fortune to have obtained the reward of the wisdom to perceive that Dharma body that I just talked about, which we said is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. That's the reward body. That's the mind of the Buddha. Okay? All right. The reward body obtained is a reward for completing bodhisattva practices and acquiring Buddha wisdom. Unlike the Dharma body, which is immaterial, the reward body is thought of as an actual body, although one that is transcendent and imperceptible to ordinary people, because you can't see my Buddha nature that's actually keeping me animated. The manifested body, or a third body, is a physical form that a Buddha assumes in this world in order to save the people. Generally, a Buddha was held to possess one of the three bodies. So there were different kind of Buddhas that didn't have all three, okay? Generally, a Buddha was held to possess one of the three bodies. In other words, the three bodies represented three different types of Buddhas originally. The Buddha of the Dharma body, the Buddha of the reward body, the Buddha of the manifested body. On the basis of the Lotus Sutra and the principle of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life derived from it, Tiantai, this guy's in China, in around 500 AD, just shortly after Kumarajiva had actually done his translation from the Sanskrit. All right, he's the one that actually studied lots of different sutras and decided that the Lotus and the Nirvana, the two sutras that were preached at the end of the Buddha's life, are the ones that actually were leading to the correct understanding of what the Buddha had been trying to convey all along. He says, on the basis of the Lotus Sutra and the principle of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life derived from it. So now what is 3,000 realms in a single moment of life? It's basically it's a mathematic extrapolation of how you already possess the Buddha nature. Okay, the 3,000 realms qualifies that you already have the Buddha nature. You don't have to go acquire it. Nobody's going to give it to you. It's an innate part of you. It's not something that's given, all right? You acquire it through your efforts to manifest the reward body that has the capacity to perceive the Dharma body. They're all connected, all right? Tentai maintained that the three bodies are not separate entities, but three integral aspects of a single Buddha. So that was the first time it had been put, okay. So we always talk about we're thus come ones of original enlightenment, eternally endowed with the three bodies. That's what our Buddhism perceives a real Buddha to be. From this point of view, the Dharma body indicates the essential property of a Buddha, the original state. Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, okay? Which is the truth or law to which the Buddha is enlightened. That's the one I'm enlightened to. The reward body indicates the wisdom or the spiritual property of a Buddha, which enables the Buddha to perceive the truth, allows them to perceive the truth because it's a karmic circumstance. It's not predicated on intellect at all. In fact, intellect can be a big problem. That's why the cause awakened ones and voice hearers were said, you're scorched seeds, you can never attain Buddhahood. Until the Lotus Sutra, his closest disciples were all told, you'll never make it. Because you only care about yourself. You're not in it for the rest of the world. You just want your own little sense of like, I'm so special because I know so much. So, and it is called the reward body because a Buddha's wisdom is considered the reward derived from ceaseless effort and discipline. Okay, so this isn't something that you get and then you can kick. You got to continue to maintain and manifest it on an ongoing basis. That's how it's real. It isn't real if you don't do the things that make it real. Yes. The manifested body indicates compassionate actions or the physical property of a Buddha. It is the body with which a Buddha carries out the compassionate actions. It's what allows us to walk around and be people. Which a Buddha carries out compassionate actions to lead people to enlightenment or those actions themselves. In discussing the passage in the lifespan chapter of the Lotus Sutra that reads, you must listen carefully and hear of the thus come one's secret and his transcendental powers, Tentai in words and phrases of the Lotus Sutra interpreted secret to mean that a single Buddha possesses all three bodies and that all three bodies are found within a single Buddha. Okay, and then I'm going to go real quick into not the threefold world. Where was it? Because we already did that. We already know the threefold world. I'm not going to bore you guys with it because it's too complicated. But we were talking, he's going to talk about the 52 stages, all right? He's going to talk about the stage of security. Go look it up. Okay. It's there. All the stuff that I'm going to discuss today, where is the life? I'm going straight to the 16th chapter. Pardon me. All right. Parable of the medicinal herbs. 5 important points. Okay. We'll be done in 3 pages. Okay. All right. We're way ahead of schedule today. Yeah. Okay. I may go to the dictionary then and read all the other stuff that I didn't think I had time to. But I also have to now explain this, so that always takes more than just reading. Okay, point 1. Concerning the parable of the medicinal herbs chapter. On words and phrases. Now, there's words and phrases that was written by Tentai. Someone later in the lineage of his school named Myolo wrote commentaries on all of his 3 major works. And so those are all on. Okay? So on words and phrases isn't Tentai, it's Tentai's disciple, removed by a couple generations of people. He comes 100 years or more after Tentai, more like 200 or 300 years after Tentai. All right, so his qualification of what words and phrases is saying says, the inborn Buddha nature. Now, that's what I was just talking about when I was talking about the Dharma body, okay? The inborn Buddha nature that is without beginning or end is comparable to the earth, and rousing the heart and mind of seeking the great vehicle is comparable to the seeds. Okay, it's just one sentence, but I got to tell you what it said. All right, the inborn Buddha nature is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. All right, it's the original state. It's the Buddha nature of everything that is innate in everything. Okay, if we were Christians, we could say it's the God in all of us. Okay,
Oh, yes.
it's the same concept. It's just the truth, a scientific, something that's not in discord, something that makes sense. All right. So the inborn Buddha nature that is without beginning or end. That means it's what?
Eternal.
It's eternal. And what does eternal mean? It's infinite in one direction and in both directions. So we don't get into creation. All right? The law itself is the function that established creation, and eventually it got to the point where there were living beings. Okay? But it was all predicated on the simultaneity of cause and effect. Okay? It had to start with something that was a law, not with something that already existed, because nothing exists yet. Okay? So this is the original state. That's why we call it the original state. All right? The inborn Buddha nature that is without beginning or end, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, is comparable to the earth, and rousing the heart and mind of seeking the great vehicle, seeking Mahayana Buddhism, is comparable to the seeds, because without these seeds, you can never grow into the plant that perceives the truth of the reality of why it exists. Arousing the heart and mind of seeking the two vehicles of voice hearers and Pratyeka Buddhas. This is world number 7 and 8 out of the 10 worlds, okay? And these are all just, actually what he clarifies, there were 10 Tentai clarified 10 worlds. Then it's clarified that in the Lotus Sutra, that those 10 worlds aren't really separate or anything like that, but that actually the last 3, because it revolves around the first 6, which are the realm of transmigration by which all people that don't escape this realm of birth and death in the 9 worlds, okay, people that don't attain Buddhahood. When you attain Buddhahood, you go back, you attain Buddhahood in every lifetime. That's why it's important to put the effort out, okay? So these voice hearers and Pratyeka Buddhas, like I said, are the ones that were scorched seeds. Up until now, they've been told, until the preaching of this, they've been told they can never attain Buddhahood. Okay, arousing the heart and mind of seeking the two vehicles of voice hearers and Pratyeka Buddha is comparable to the sprouts and stalks of the plants. The lesser understanding, the steps that get you there. In other words, again, you got to be a voice hearer before you can have enough understanding to realize things on your own. That's a cause awakened one, okay? Once you've accomplished both of those things, so you understand doctrine and how to express it, then one goes about telling others. That makes one a bodhisattva. What the Buddha qualified is, up until now, you've been thinking that voice hearers and cause awakened ones and bodhisattvas were 3 different things. They're not 3 different things. They're all just Buddhahood. They're all the phases of getting to the 10th world. Okay, you got to hear the correct teaching. You've got to practice it. You've got to care about other people and develop your wisdom, because your wisdom is, your compassion is what develops your wisdom.
Yes.
Okay, all wisdom comes from compassion, according to this teaching. Okay, so, all right. So after that, when one enters the first stage of security, which was what I was going to get into in the dictionary, but it would have just bored you at this point in time. But again, in Tentai's teaching, you had to go through 10 stages of this and 10 stages of this, 10 stages of this, 10 stages, 10, that was 50 stages. And they were all like steps, okay? So that when you got to the 10th stage of a stage, you went on to the next stage, okay? All right, So essentially then, I don't know really where I was going with that. The 10 stages of security.
Yeah. The last
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, familiar with it. No. These are the seeds. Let me just continue. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says belief in the heart of this Lotus Sutra is the seeds. Okay, that's what he's clarifying here. I'm sorry. First, he quotes Myelo as qualifying what Myelo and Tentai were talking about, their interpretation of this is.
Right.
Okay? They didn't interpret the heart. Okay?
Right.
The heart is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. The heart of the Lotus Sutra is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Okay? That's what's hidden in the lifespan chapter. It's the essence of the Lotus Sutra. In the latter day of the law, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo once is more powerful than reading the Lotus Sutra multiple times. Because that was then, this is now. Okay? This is a Buddhism that is meant to establish world peace and unanimity amongst all living beings.
Yes.
All right, so that's why it's like this. So he first quotes Myelo saying that was then, this is the understanding of then, and this is now. The record of the orally translated teaching says, Nichiren says, belief in the heart of the Lotus Sutra, belief in Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is the seeds. And when one enters the enlightenment of the true aspect of all phenomena, and the enlightenment of the true aspect of all phenomena is to realize that the original state is in everything. Okay, and so subsequently there is nothing in the entire universe that you're not connected to, that you don't have a component that you share with it. Okay, nothing in the universe lacks this original state. Okay, so that's the whole point. And when one enters the enlightenment, that means I get it now. It's everything is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. It's not just a phrase that you use like a wish kind of a deal. This is the truth. Okay, I get it. All right, so when one enters the enlightenment of the true aspect of all phenomena, then one achieves the fruit of Buddhahood. Because when you understand that, according to this, that's all there is to it. You're a Buddha. Now, even if you've got bad habits, you've got this, you've got that, it doesn't matter who you are. You are because of those 9 worlds that you've now revealed the 10th. The 10th is part of all of them. So there's a 10th world of hell. There's a 10th world of hunger. There's a 10th world of animality. There's a 10th world of, okay? That everything is mutual possession, just like cause and effect. Do you understand? All right. Here. And when one enters the enlightenment of the true aspect of all phenomena, then one achieves the fruit of Buddhahood. Medicine represents the mind of living beings in the 9 worlds, okay? Those that have not awakened their 10th world yet, even though it's there in a dormant state. The mind that is devoted to the provisional teachings, okay? Those are the teachings that taught that you could never be a Buddha, that you weren't a Buddha, that you would take lifetimes to be a Buddha. Those are the teachings that are in the sutras that are prior to the lotus and the nirvana.
Right.
Okay? Those were all meant as stepping stones for him to get through his 50-year period of teaching to get you to the lotus and nirvana. So he's saying the mind that is devoted to the provisional teachings, which means that even though the Buddha told you that they're provisional and that you should now accept the words of truth that I'm telling you in the lotus, as he says in the lotus, you still hold on to the old teachings like you're smarter than him. Okay? That's why it becomes poison. All right? The mind that is devoted to the provisional teachings is comparable to a poison plant. But when one encounters the Lotus Sutra, because it just reversed all that bad information, then the mind ground of the earthly desires, that is beset by the 3 poisons of greed, anger, and foolishness, is planted with the seeds of the complete enjoyment of the 3 bodies of a Buddha. And awakening to this fact is what is called medicine. It's calling the medicine of awakening to your own Buddha nature allows you to deal with anything and everything without it being a mystery or, again, you have to be that's why we chant. You heard me chant a lot in the mornings. We have to activate this mind, Okay, this reward body, because it's different than just the head that knows facts. Okay, it's a karmic reward. All right, and he says, okay, the completement is the three bodies of a Buddha, and awakening to this fact is what is meant by medicine. Awakening to the fact that you're the Buddha, the medicine of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo helped reveal the truth and release you from being imprisoned in the confines that you were leaving yourself in by not knowing all the sutras. You stopped, you may have started with wherever. You didn't get to the lotus to know that, oh, Shakyamuni continued and then discredited everything he has said for the 40 years prior to that.
Prior to that, yeah.
He says, in these more than 40 years, I have not yet revealed the truth. Now I must reveal the truth in the Lotus Sutra. That's what makes it so dynamic. He says very clearly, everything I've said now has been preparatory. I haven't told you yet. And then he starts saying that he attained Buddhahood under the, not under the Bodhi tree, but as the 16th son of great universal wisdom, excellence Buddha, who was also teaching a Lotus Sutra at that point. It's again, going on to page 63. Now, this is talk, and then he always does a summation. Those of us that do actually practice qualify for this summation. Actually, the summation qualifies for everybody, but you have to activate this aspect of your life for this summation to be applicable to you. Mm-hmm. Now, Nichiren and his followers, so I don't know if you consider yourself a follower, but he's saying the cool thing about the dude is that whenever he says something about himself, he says, all my followers exactly the same. So he does not ever, 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 ever take a posture of being someone at a higher level, like Shakyamuni did constantly.
Right.
Okay? So now Nichiren and his followers apply this medicine of the wonderful law, which is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, to the plants of earthly desires. We chant for what we want to have happen.
Yeah.
Right? And by virtue of seeing those things, that power actually manifest, we're able to have faith in the teaching which we can find, which is not so easily revealed in terms of the truth. It's a developmental process of seeing power, right? Okay, so now Nichiren and his followers apply this medicine of the wonderful law to the plants of earthly desires. This is, in effect, a way of saying in parable form that earthly desires are enlightenment and the sufferings of birth and death are nirvana. On the two, Siddham are the two big characters on the side of in the middle on the outside. Or it's not Sanskrit and it's not Chinese. It's Siddham. It's an ancient text of the olden days in India, I guess. But basically, what is on that object of devotion are the words or the expression of what we would say in English as earthly desires are enlightenment. Okay, now all the Buddhist teachings up until the Lotus Sutra has said earthly desires are the cause of all suffering. You need to get rid of earthly desires, right?
Right.
Lotus Sutra says, no, you can't get rid of earthly desires. You'd be dead.
Yeah, you can.
Okay, earthly desires are part of life. So what you got to learn how to do is to utilize earthly desires in the correct or in the 10th world predicate rather than in a lower life condition predicate. Okay? So he says, now Nichiren and his followers apply this medicine of the wonderful law to the plants of earthly desires. This is in effect a way of saying that in parable form that earthly desires are enlightenment, and the reason for that is that by using Nam-myoho Renge-kyo to accomplish earthly desires, we're able to ultimately manifest Buddhahood. Mm-hmm. That's earthly desires equal enlightenment, are enlightenment, because that's what leads you to enlightenment. Your desires that you're able to prove the power of this practice with are the firewood of Buddhahood that keep you going and going and studying and continuing. Yes. All right? And the sufferings of birth and death are nirvana. Why is that true? It would seem that no, we want to go to nirvana. That's what the whole thing, all the Hinayana teaching is all about, getting blown out and never having to suffer earthly desires because you never remanifest, right? So the sufferings of birth and death are nirvana. is indicating the reality that it is only when we live in the 9 worlds that we can reveal the 10th world. Okay? So the sufferings of birth and death are the only reason we're able to perceive and then utilize the life state of the original state, nirvana. Okay? So he says a commentary, volume 5 of Words and Phrases. So this would be Tentai. See, he started with the commentary. Okay, a commentary, Words and Phrases, a commentary on the Lotus Sutra. A commentary says, a parable is that which enlightens and instructs. Thus, the parable of the medicinal herbs is in fact about all of us who are votaries of the Lotus Sutra. So he qualifies there, right there, guys, that what we're reading right now, okay, we're reading as votaries of the Lotus Sutra, and there's a reason for that. Okay, it's why we are here. Okay, all right. All right, point 2. Good thing there's only 5. Point 2, on the fact that this chapter represents the stage of presentation and mastery, and this isn't one of the 10 stages elements. Okay, this is something from the teachings. He goes straight into his teaching because there's nothing from Myolo or Tentai or Myolo to preface it with. So he says, point 2, on the fact that this chapter represents the stage of presentation and mastery. This is straight from Nichiren's Enlightenment. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says the word presentation pertains to Maheke Shayapa, to whom the teachings were presented. That's who he was talking to in this chapter. Okay? That's who the Buddha had this conversation about the parable of medicinal herbs. He's one of the key voice hearers, along with Sherry Putra. Okay, the word mastery or completion pertains to Shakyamuni Buddha, who acknowledges Maheke Shayapa's mastery of them. Okay, thus the 2 words presentation and mastery signify the fact that Maheke Shayapa and Shakyamuni Buddha, based on what Shakyamuni Buddha had just preached in this, have attained an identical level of understanding. So he has not given Maheke Shayapa an answer that is less than the one that he affords to himself. They become equal. Okay, and so the whole thing that a lot of people also, why does a Buddha appear in the world according to Buddhism? What is the function of why did Christ appear in the world? It was to save everybody, right? Why does a Buddha come into the world? Not to save everybody, but in fact to save them, but by making them equal to himself, by allowing them all to become Buddhas themselves. So this is an example of what he's talking about. There are not hierarchical levels of Buddhahood. A Buddha is a Buddha is a Buddha. Okay? So, Maheke Shayapa, once he figured out and understood clearly, and Shakyamuni's qualifying, yes, you have understood it, they're equal. They're equal. There's no longer, Maheke Shayapa has attained the same state of enlightenment as Shakyamuni. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says the word presentation pertains to Maheke Shayapa, to whom the teachings were presented. The word mastery or completion pertains to Shakyamuni, who acknowledges Maheke Shayapa's mastery of them. He has now made him equal to himself. That's why it's completion for Shakyamuni. Okay? Thus, the 2 words presentation and mastery signify the fact that Maheke Shayapa and Shakyamuni Buddha have attained an identical level of understanding. Shakyamuni has fulfilled his function as a Buddha. He's made Maheke Shayapa equal to himself. That's his whole intention. In the end, then, presentation denotes the student's acceptance and understanding of the teachings that have been presented to him, and mastery denotes the seal of approval that the Buddha grants to the student. So the student can hear what he thinks is being taught and perceive it to be something that it is not being meant as being. It's only when he gets the confirmation And we get our confirmation from chanting to the Gohonzon and seeing our lives continue to progress and to see our problems continue to dissipate and what we pray for to occur. And we keep studying and we keep, well, this is all fitting. Oh, this is completely exactly what I'm reading and exactly what I'm living. How weird is that? Well, I guess it's not weird at all. I guess it's just the truth. Okay? So he says, in the end, then, presentation denotes the student's acceptance and understanding. So that's faith, okay, which brings about understanding. Understanding cannot precede faith.
Right.
It's only through acceptance does the understanding take place of the teachings that have been presented to him. And mastery denotes the seal of approval that the Buddha grants to the student. Now, in the case of Nichiren and his followers, presentation is the student's acceptance of Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. And mastery is the praise that Nichiren bestows upon that acceptance. And if you want to feel that praise, chant Daimoku with sincere faith. I get that praise all the time. I know anybody can. If I can get it, anybody can. And mastery is the praise that you will actually feel in your life, knowing that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. Okay, that Nichiren bestows upon that acceptance. You believed me. You're going to get big rewards for that. This chapter explains to the full how we can attain Buddhahood in our present forms by having faith in the correct teacher and the correct teaching. The fact that the presentation and mastery of the teachings match exactly like the two halves of a tally indicates the presentation and mastery that are not two different things, right? Okay, they're not two different things. We flip it. We go from delusion, we go from being a common mortal to a Buddha. They're the same thing. They're two sides of the same, not two different entities. Okay, two different minds. It's the same mind. It's either deluded or it's enlightened. Okay, exactly like indicates the presentation and mastery are not two different things. That is, that we can attain Buddhahood in our present forms. We don't have to become 16 feet tall and march around like Shakyamuni in the sutras. This presentation and mastery that we were speaking of here is, whoops, darn it. Thank you. Bummer. I tried grabbing it too hard and too fast. I'm thirsty. Leave it with me, please. Thank you. The quality of these books is really unbelievable. This is the second time I've done this. I didn't know they had waterproof pages, but they don't even have, they're smear-proof pages. Jesus, that's cool stuff. Okay. Also, in our lexicon, to master, to be able to actually accomplish all of this transformation of understanding, we call that human revolution, which is a process that occurs over a period of time. Your mind determines how long that period of time is. It doesn't have to be years and years. It could be years and years. It could be decades and decades. Okay, but everybody's different. Not everybody comes to the same conclusion at the same speed. All right, so he says, this chapter explains in full how we can attain Buddhahood in our present forms. The fact that the presentation and the mastery of the teaching match exactly like the two halves of a tally indicate that presentation and mastery are not two different things. That is, we can attain Buddhahood in our present forms. This presentation and mastery that we're speaking of here is the presentation and mastery of the means whereby all living beings in the 3,000 worlds of the Dharma realm can muster and attain the Buddha way. This mastery and presentation is about becoming a Buddha in your present form. Okay, point 3, page 64. And I'm going about right speed. Point 3 on the passage, though all these plants and trees grow in the same earth and are moistened by the same rain, it has differences and particulars. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says, this principle of eternal and unchanging truth and the wisdom of the truth that functions with changing circumstances derive from this passage. Now, are we all clear on what that is? The principle of eternal and unchanging truth is Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, right? And the and the wisdom of the truth that functions with changing circumstances is what? Our Buddhahood, our Buddha nature, being able to perceive Nam Myoho Renge Kyo in everything, derived from this passage, from understanding that all the different plants and trees all get the same damn rain as me. There's no difference between us. Okay? That's the understanding that I'm supposed to come up with. I'm supposed to drop all of my prejudices about other people or other things. Okay? So again, though all the plants and trees grow in the same earth and are moistened by the same rain, each has its differences and particulars. I have my differences and particulars. You have your differences and particulars. You have your differences. We're all like that. Okay? So, the great teacher, okay, so that's the first part he says here. Okay, this is derived from this passage. It all derives from this truth that all things are equal. They all get the same rain. It's Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, okay? The great teacher Myolo, in his Diamond Scalpel teaching, which is we call it the Diamond Scalpel Sutra, says the doctrine of that which accords with changing circumstances and that which is unchanging derives from the great teaching. The assertion that trees and stones have no mind comes from the lesser tradition. So again, we believe that the environment is alive, predicated on the reality that it is supporting our life, and that all life must have an environment before it can live, and therefore the environment is also a living being. Okay, it's a part of all living beings. So there is no separation between you and anything. I got a lot in common with that stone wall right there. Okay, more than I might like. Okay, so the great teacher Myolo in the Diamond says the doctrine in which of that which accords with changing circumstances and that which is unchanging derives from the great teaching. The assertion that trees and stones have no mind comes from the lesser tradition. The words great teaching do not refer to the Lotus Sutra as a whole, but only to the 17 characters that make up the passage quoted above. The words grow in the same earth and are moistened by the same rain present a simile for the state of being without differentiation. That's what I was just talking about. Seeing everything as the same as you, made of the original state, reflecting your differences and particulars based on the karmic influences you've created. Okay? The words each has its differences and particulars present a simile for the state of possessing differentiation. We're surrounded by differentiation, okay? Because the simile speaks of things as being without differentiation, this aspect of it corresponds to myo, or wonderful. Because as you can see, everything has differentiation, but in its essence, there is no differentiation. Okay? That's the point. Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. This aspect of it corresponds to myo, or wonderful, because it's mystic and unfathomable. And because it speaks of things as possessing differentiation, this aspect of it corresponds to ho, or phenomena, the manifested or conditioned by the law reality that we live in. Now when Nichiren and his followers chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, they are setting aside differentiation. They're not discerning differentiation. They're discerning the coinciding aspect of the original state. That's what you see in everything. You don't see it, everything as being different. You see everything's the same. Okay?
Yes.
All right. The 28 chapters of the Lotus Sutra. Okay. I'll do it after this. The 28 chapters of the Lotus Sutra represent differentiation. We understand? Because it's talking about all kinds of different stuff, right? But the 5 characters of the wonderful law Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, which is real, 7 characters, but the 5 characters of Myoho Renge Kyo is the same thing as the 7 characters of Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. But the 5 characters of the wonderful law are without differentiation. They're an essence. Okay? That's the Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. That's the original state aspect, right? The same earth of the passage quoted above is the great earth of the theoretical teaching. Okay? And the same rain is the highest heaven of the essential teaching. Okay? Why do we have a theoretical teaching and an essential teaching? What was the function of the theoretical teaching?
Yes.
Baby
Theoretical.
steps.
To condition
Yes.
the understanding so that when the essential teaching, when the truth was taught,
Right.
you'd have a place to grab a hold of it rather than what the hell are you talking about?
Exactly.
Okay, so that's why it's called the lesser vehicle, because it really doesn't contain the truth.
Yes.
It contains a bunch of rules on how to live.
Yeah.
Okay, like so many religions. Okay. All right, so the 28 chapters of the Lotus Sutra represent differentiation, but the 5 characters of the wonderful law of Nam Myoho Renge Kyo are without differentiation. The same earth of the passage quoted above is the great earth of the theoretical teaching, and the same rain is the highest heaven of the essential teaching. So you had to have the theoretical teaching to get to the theoretical teaching to get to the essential, and this is what's he say? Is the highest heaven. Okay, so this is the height of the essential teaching he's qualifying here. Now I've got to read this little asterisk here before I read the paragraph. So go to the very bottom in the small print where it says, from the perspective that. Okay, it says, let me go ahead and read the sentence that it's going to then, okay. From the last paragraph on page 64. The same earth represents a teaching from cause to effect, while the same rain represents a teaching from effect to cause. Now that the latter day has arrived, we are propagating the same rain, and that represents the teaching from effect to cause. This same rain or single rain is the daimoku unmixed with any other religious practice. It is the original state. So what he's qualifying here is, again, the same earth represents a teaching from cause to effect, okay? Which is what we see in the 9 worlds, right? Yes. Okay. And the same rain teaching, the same rain represents a teaching from effect to cause. Effect to cause always starts with the original state. So instead of 10th world is Buddhahood, it starts with Buddhahood. The original state is Buddhahood. That's what he's talking about when he says that having it go from effect to cause. Okay? Not from cause to effect. Okay, let me say it again. I might have them mixed up. The same earth represents a teaching from cause to effect, while the same rain represents a teaching from effect to cause, because the rain is the highest heaven of the essential teaching. It's Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Okay, it is Buddhahood, and then delusion comes and distorts Buddhahood, and we then have beings of the 9 worlds. Do you understand? The original state is Buddhahood. All right. All other states are a disparagement or delusion of that original state. You with me? All right, so have I read all of that? No, okay. From the perspective that in terms of the 10 worlds, cause represents the 9 worlds and effect represents Buddhahood, as we've already discussed. Nichiren refers to 2 kinds of teachings. Those that view things from the standpoint of cause to effect, as they were taught by Shakyamuni, okay, and those that are effect to cause, because this isn't like cause and effect is not inseparable. It's not separable.
Right.
Okay, so it's his way of qualifying the original state versus something that was taught as a teaching. Okay, that's why it's of the 9. Okay, let me read it again. From the perspective that in terms of the 10 worlds, okay, and we all know what the 10 worlds are, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Cause represents the 9 worlds, as we already know, and effect represents Buddhahood. Nichiren refers to 2 kinds of teachings, the Buddhism of harvest and the Buddhism of sowing.
Yes.
Right? Okay. Nichiren refers to 2 kinds of teachings, those that view things from the standpoint of cause to effect, Buddhism of harvest, and those that approach things from the standpoint of effect to cause, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo of the original state, the essential teaching, right? The former indicates Shakyamuni's teachings by which ordinary people carry out Buddhist practice, cause, aiming at the goal of Buddhahood, effect for countless lifetimes according to the sutras. In contrast, the latter indicates Nichiren's teaching, in which ordinary people manifest their inherent Buddhahood, not by gaining it or attaining it by doing something, by just recognizing it and bringing it forth, and go out among the people of the 9 worlds and cause them cause to lead them to Buddhahood, to tell them that truth. You already have the 10th world in you. Everybody with me?
Yep.
Okay, so now I can read that whole paragraph. The same earth represents a teaching from cause to effect, while the same rain represents a teaching from effect to cause. Now that the latter day has arrived, which means we are now in this time when Nam-myoho Renge-kyo has become manifest.
Right.
We are propagating the same rain that represents the same teaching from effect to cause. We are propagating the Buddhism of sowing.
Yes.
All right? This same rain or single rain is the daimoku, unmixed with any other religious practice.
Right.
Because we all understand that's all very important too. We only chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo.
Right.
We don't study the flower garland sutra or the lesser sutras. We blow them off.
Right.
Because we've already been told there's nothing there for us by our master.
Right.
And we see his power, we go, cool, dude, I didn't need all that shit anyhow.
Right.
Okay? Continuing on page 65, the introduction chapter of the Lotus Sutra speaks of how the Buddha wishes to rain down the rain of the great law. Now this chapter, the parable of medicinal herbs, speaks of the plants and trees that are moistened by the same rain. Moistened by the same rain indicates that the Buddha has continued to rain down the rain of the great law as stated in the introduction chapter. Okay, you remember that. There's the first chapter of the sutra is the introduction chapter. We're past that already by 5 chapters, right? It's there. The introduction chapter of the Lotus Sutra speaks of how the Buddha wishes to rain down the rain of the great law. Now this chapter, the parable of the medicinal herbs, speaks of the plants and trees that are moistened by the same rain. Moistened by the same rain indicates that the Buddha has continued to rain down the rain of the great law as stated in the introduction chapter. There is no discrepancy between the teachings of Shakyamuni and the teachings of Nichiren. The difference is the age and the people that are qualified to receive the teaching. That's it.
Yeah.
They manifest in an age according to the karma that allows them to be able to get the teaching that they've already merit the fortune to be able to encounter. Do you follow?
Yeah.
The same rain or single earth represents the character Kyo in the 5 characters of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. It's the teaching. The same rain or single rain represents the character Myo, the mystic reality that is beyond your capacity to fathom. And the 3 other characters represent Ho, Rin, and Ge, are the 10,000 phenomena of the 3,000 worlds, particularly the plants and trees. They are the 3 vehicles, the 5 vehicles, the 7 expedients, and the 9 worlds. Okay, and rather than getting into defining all those, I just thought I would qualify it quickly. These are all the means by which we get to be able to reveal the 10th. If you don't have the 9 worlds, if you don't understand the truth of the 9 worlds, no way can you qualify yourself to be a Buddha, right? Okay. Point 4, on the passage, the Dharma King, destroyer of being. When he appears in the world, accords with the desires of living beings, preaching the law in a variety of ways. What'd you make out of that?
It's scary.
It is, but Nietzsche's going to qualify. Because what he's destroying is your delusion that thinks that there's only 9 worlds in you, that doesn't know that there's a 10th world. That's why The Dharma king is the Buddha. Okay? That's why he is the destroyer of being. The delusion that you think you are something that's going to repeat. You believe in reincarnation, not transmigration. Okay? You believe you're going to stay the same somehow, or you're going to go to heaven somehow, or you're going to go see people that you know. Okay? When we're temporary gatherings of the 5 components that come together at the point in time a zygote is created, and when we die, they separate, they dissipate. They're all different aspects of our sensory capacities. All right, so point 4, the passage of the Dharma king, destroyer of being, when he appears in the world, accords with the desires of living beings. This is all from the Lotus Sutra, preaching the law in a variety of ways. Nichiren goes straight into it again, because there's nothing like Nam-myoho Renge-kyo actually in any of Myoho or Tentai's teaching. Only an allusion to. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says being refers to those who slander the law. Destroyer of refers to shakabuku, or refutation of the slander, which is what we do, right? The Dharma king means the votary of the Lotus Sutra, which is what we are the minute we start to refute the slander of the law. Do understand that. You're taking on the same role as the Buddha, right? Okay, so let me go again. The Nichiren says, being refers to those who slander the law. Destroyer refers to shakabuku, or refutation of slander. We're destroying the evil that they possess by their misunderstandings. The Dharma king means the votary of the Lotus Sutra. That is us doing what this says. Is us being what this paragraph says. The world refers to the country of Japan, because that's all he's talking to right now. Again, we may say that the word destroyer stands for non-substantiality, being stands for temporary existence, and the Dharma king stands for the middle way. Since this is so, this passage is describing the seeds that lead to the state of the thus come one Shakyamuni. In fact, the appearance in the world of all Buddhas of the 3 existences of past, present, and future comes about through this passage. All right, so let me go back to this little bit where he's got being, existence. Last little paragraph, a little asterisk here on the bottom of page 65, which pertains to this piece. Being, existence in Buddhism is regarded as an illusion, illusion. Okay, being, thinking of self, seeing permanence, rather than recognizing everything is impermanent, including you. Okay? Being in Buddhism is regarded as illusion, because you think you know something that's not what it appears to be. For the true nature of all things is emptiness, or non-substantiality, because everything goes back into non-substantiality from the state of substantiality, and then reappears in the state of substantiality from the state of non-substantiality. Birth and rebirth, birth and death that are not birth and death. Endless. Yeah. Thus the Dharma king is called destroyer of being, or destroyer of illusion. Okay, so I read this whole, okay. Since this is so, the passage is describing the seeds. Page 66. The seeds. So what are the seeds? This pass with regard to being, since this is so, okay. He says, again, we may say the word destroyer stands for non-substantiality, the ultimate state of all things. Being stands for temporary existence. Yeah. We got arms and legs and we can move. Yeah. Okay? And the truth of the middle way, and the Dharma king stands for the truth of the middle way. Why does it say that? Interest. Non-substantiality, a supernatural state that's beyond our comprehension. Right? Being, just common people. Yeah. What's the truth of the middle way? Yes, but what does that mean then?
The original state.
Yes, that means that the original state. Yes. What's that mean then? The truth of the middle way. I'm not in temporary existence. I'm
No.
not in a permanent existence. It's the truth that it's a little
Right.
bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? It's wisdom. It's Buddha wisdom. That's the truth of the middle way is Buddha wisdom. Right? So the Dharma King stands for the middle way. When you understand the truth, you become the Dharma King. You're the Buddha at the point in time you understand the truth. There's nothing more to it to be the Buddha.
Right.
All right?
Right.
Since this is so, this passage is describing the seeds that lead to the state of the thus come one, Shakyamuni. He had to go through this process to be able to say what he said in all those sutras. Okay? In fact, he says, the appearance in the world of all the Buddhas of the three existences. In fact, so in other words, there are no Buddhas that appear in any other way than the way that we just talked about right here. Okay? You got to get the illusion destroyed that you're permanent. You're temporary. You're a temporary gathering of the five components. Your karmic influence is what re-manifests as a manifest state. How you behave changes. See, during this lifetime, the five components that are aggregates, okay, that create the entity that you are affected by the things that you did or did not do. Okay, so when they remanifest, they're not going to remanifest in the same exact form.
Right.
Because they're going to reflect the causes you made in this lifetime,
Yes.
which were not reflected when they came together when you were born. Get it? Okay, so that's what he's saying. All right. With regard to being, there are 25 realms of being or existence in the threefold world. And when we talk about the threefold world, we know we're talking about that spooky stuff, right? The world of desire is what we live in. Then there's the world of form, that's a whole bunch of other stuff. And then there's a world of formlessness that's also part of the threefold world. And both of those are dead ends.
Right.
World of form and formlessness will not get you to the state of Buddhahood.
No.
All right? So when he says 25 realms of being, he's talking about in the threefold world. Okay? To destroy means to destroy one's attachment to these realms of being. Because what are these realms of being? They are manifest states. Okay? They are then, therefore, temporary. Right? So you don't want to have attachment to something that's temporary because it's only going to be temporary. And if you have attachment to it, you'll be longing for it. If it's not the truth that you're attached to, you'll be longing for things that don't lead to the truth. Do you understand why they're saying this? So let me read it again. You got 25 different kinds of people you could be. To destroy means to destroy one's attachment to these realms of being. Because you want to be a transcendent Buddha that comes back as a Buddha each time. You're never going to go to the world of form or formlessness of the dead ends. And you're never going to appear in the 9 worlds without the 10th world coming about in the course of your lifetime.
Right.
All right? The Dharma King is the mind Dharma of the living beings of the 10 worlds. There's no separation between us and Buddhahood. Any living being in Buddhahood. All right? The word king means mind Dharma. Okay? Which is one of the 5 components. It's the 6th, right? Form, perception, conception, volition, and mind, right? Form, perception, conception, volition, mind, yes. It's one of the 5 components. When one gains enlightenment into the true aspect of all phenomena, which is dependent upon the age, right? Because you could understand the true aspect of all phenomena in the middle day, theoretically. Okay? After Chintai had qualified all the stuff he did. All right, so he's saying, one gains enlightenment into the true aspect of all phenomena. He's talking about Nam-myoho Renge-kyo.
Yep.
This is what is meant by the Dharma King, destroyer of being, because that Nam-myoho Renge-kyo has the power to make you a Buddha in your present form, and that's not something that will ever leave you in any future lifetime. Now, when Nichiren and his followers chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, they are putting an end to the attachment to being or slander of the law, and becoming Buddhas like Shakyamuni, the Dharma King. So he says, now when Nichiren and his followers chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, they become just like Shakyamuni. They're the same as Shakyamuni. These two words, destroyer of being, are the seeds that lead to one's becoming a Buddha-like, the thus come one, Shakyamuni. Okay, it's the teaching that led me to be able to say what I just said from the bottom of my heart with the certainty that I said it, not because I think that's the boilerplate that should be expressed, because I know that's the truth. It's the basis of my enlightenment. So I know it's real. All right? Again, we may say that the being stands for the realm of earthly desires and of birth and death. The essence of the provisional teachings and the provisional doctrines is one that must be cast aside, the realm of earthly desires and of birth and death, and enter a different realm, that which is that of enlightenment and nirvana. Let me say it again. Again, we may say that being stands for the realm of earthly desires and the realm of birth and death. The essence of the provisional teachings and the provisional doctrines is that one must cast aside the realm of earthly desires and the realm of birth and death and enter a different realm, that which is that of enlightenment or nirvana. Right? So you had to go through a process and then you had to become the Buddha. Okay? But the essence of the present sutra, the lotus, is that while remaining right here in the realm of earthly desires and birth and death, one can achieve a state of enlightenment and nirvana. This is what is termed destroyer, because you've destroyed the hold of the delusion of the 9 worlds by having the 10th world aspect in all your 9 worlds, because you've attained Buddhahood as a disciple of the original teacher, expressing your original state. All right? Being represents earthly desires, and that which destroys it is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Because Nam-myoho Renge-kyo destroys you being just a common mortal. You meet Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, you're not a common mortal anymore. The 10th world is not a potential. It's a reality.
It's real, yeah.
Okay? Being represents earthly desires, and that which destroys it is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Being is that which is destroyed, and the destroyer is that which is capable of being destroyed. Delusion. Bad things. Not value.
Right.
Both the destroyer and the destroyed participate in the single principle of the true aspect of all phenomena. There is no truth if you don't include everything. Okay? So even the delusion has to always be perceived as part of the perfect teaching.
Yes.
Because that's what we come out of before we become Buddhas.
Yes.
We come from a place of delusion before we know the truth, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so the introduction chapter of the Lotus Sutra speaks of those who had put an end to the bonds of existence or being. The present chapter speaks of the Dharma King, destroyer of being, and the simile and parable chapter states that this threefold world is all my domain. He's qualifying, these are all the same statements in different chapters of the Lotus Sutra. They're qualifying the same thing. All right? Got to get rid of that common mortal
Delusion.
hubris. All right? Point 5, and we're done.
Yeah.
Hey, you made it all the way through without falling asleep. What happened to your wife? I'm joking. Point 5, on the words, I look upon all things as being universally equal. I have no mind to favor this or that, to love one or hate another. I am without greed or attachment and without limitation or hindrance. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says these 6 lines of verse make up this passage refer to the 5 levels of consciousness. Okay. That make up this passage refer to the 5 levels of consciousness. The words, I look upon all things as being universally equal represent the ninth consciousness. Do you understand why? I'll say it again. This isn't that hard if you think about it. The words, I look upon all things. Now, who's saying that? A Buddha. Okay, Shakyamuni was actually the one that was saying that, but this is all Buddhists say these same words, they view things this way.
Okay.
I look upon all things as being universally equal. Represents the ninth consciousness. Now, why is it the ninth consciousness that represents
He's a
that?
human.
Huh? What?
He's just a common mortal, just like us.
No, again, the point is that the ninth consciousness, and again, is only acknowledged by two different schools of thought. Okay? Lotus and
And
flower garland, and those are the two heaviest. I mean, the highest teaching of the provisional teachings is the flower garland, by the way. Okay,
Right.
so what he's basically saying is, again, the ninth consciousness is the realm of origin. It is the realm of Nam-myoho. It is free from all defilement. There is no delusion in the ninth. There's no karmic impediments in the ninth. Okay, so if I'm going to look at all things equally, I'm actually seeing them from the reason I say that is my brain is nothing is separate. Everything's the same. That actually only occurs in the ninth consciousness.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
That's
Yes.
where that wisdom comes from. Okay. Then now I love to share. All right? Point 5, on the words, I look upon all things as being universally equal. I have no mind to favor this or that, to love or to hate another. I am without greed or attachment and without limitation or hindrance. Sounds like a Buddha to me.
Yeah.
The record of that means then that you would be of the night. You wouldn't have any hubris. You wouldn't have any
Right.
karmic bullshit.
Right.
All right. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says these 6 lines of verse that make up this passage refer to the 5 levels of consciousness. The words, I look upon all things as being universally equal, represents the 9th consciousness. The words, I have no mind to favor this or that, concerns the 8th consciousness. The words, I have no mind to love or hate another, concerns the 7th consciousness. The words, I am without greed or attachment, concerns the 6th consciousness. And the words, I am without limitation or hindrance, concern the other 5 consciousnesses, the ones, from form, perception, conception, volition, and mind, right? These 5 levels of consciousness constitute the basic nature of the way in which living beings view things. Right? It is.
Yes.
If you break it down, if you go take that dictionary definition of the 9 consciousnesses and listen to each discernment that he makes there, it all fits.
Right.
He says, now in summation, and then we're done. Right on time. Now Nichiren and his followers who chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo are practicing the 9th consciousness.
Yes.
That is, I look upon all things as being equally universally equal. Are they not? And because they do so, they have no mind to favor this or that. Have they not? They have no mind to love or hate another. Have they? They are without greed or attachment. Are they not? They are without limitation or hindrance. Are they not? Because when he's referring to his disciples, he's referring to you as Buddhists. Not
Yes.
with your 9 world funkiness hanging out.
Right.
All right? You've been chanting Daimoku. You're glowing. Your 10th is what's predominant in your life. Ba-boom, boom.
Makes sense.
Correlate the dictionary to the verses. It makes all kinds of sense. Thank you for everybody for all your time. Appreciate it. See you next week.
you.
They,